Welcome to the Transforming Healthcare Coaching Podcast, where we're all about helping healthcare professionals like you create positive change at work, at home, and everywhere in between. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Transforming Healthcare Coaching Podcast. And this week, I'm super excited to welcome Dr. Peter Kim, the Passive Income M.D., to our podcast. This is a dream because I've been following you for quite some time since the pandemic. And so I wanted to give you a chance to introduce yourself, what Passive Income M.D. is about, and all the different things that you're offering.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. Well,
I know.
anyways, I'm super excited to be here. Thank you so much. As you mentioned, my name is Peter Kim. I run a brand called Passive Income M.D., and we just talk about different ways to create your ideal life as a physician, whether it's through other streams of income, creating businesses, optimizing your practices. The whole point is to educate and then connect people to great resources and then build a community around you to make sure you're supported to get you everything you need to help get you where you want to be.
I know it is so hard to get good information after you graduate from training on entrepreneurship, starting your own medical practice, or diversification of income for healthcare professionals. And I came into your ecosphere during the pandemic online through the Leverage and Growth Summit. So could you share a little bit about why you were able to start LGS?
Sure. I mean, a lot of times I like to tell people, or at least make it seem like I have it all figured out. But to be honest with you, like a lot of the stuff I just create, not knowing if it's going to work. Sometimes you just get that spark of inspiration and you just feel like you have to follow through on it. I mean, Leverage and Growth Summit was one of those things where I'd already started this brand, Passive Income M.D., and we were mostly in the form of a blog. We had a podcast. We had just done our first live conference. And then the pandemic hit. And all of a sudden, we have this whole community of people that are sitting at home in our Facebook group and just talking about what are they going to do. I mean, some people were set, there was like forced sabbaticals happening. People weren't sure what to do with their careers. Reimbursements were getting cut. All of a sudden, all just happened without people expecting or knowing. And so during that time, honestly, the morale seemed a little bit low. And so all we did was ask our community, like, what do you need right now? How can we support you the best? And a lot of them were like, I'd love to know what else is out there. How can I create my own security? What are other things I can do to create income? And I've been really fortunate just being where I'm at with my platforms that I've been connected to a lot of amazing people like you and different people who are listening to this, who are doing some really cool things, both in and outside of medicine, especially leveraging the medical degrees. And so I decided to just interview them, just get them together in a virtual format. That's when Zoom was just really starting to get a hold of kind of being a normal culture. And so all I did was interview 50 of my friends who were doing things a little bit differently. And some of them were starting practices, some of them were coaching, some of them were investing in real estate, some were in venture capital, all just these cool stories that I felt like people needed to hear. And I put that together in something called the Leverage and Growth Summit. Kind of didn't know what I was doing at first, but put it together. And for whatever reason, it just took off. I guess people were just sitting at home. They didn't know what else to do. Somebody told somebody about it. And next thing, over this 2-week virtual conference, we had tens of thousands of people show up to this. And that's how it all got started. I guess that's where we got to know each other, at least from a virtual standpoint.
Oh, that's really amazing. And I think there's a lot of lessons in what you just shared about the fact that you just started. You started with a podcast. You started with a blog. You started with educating because you were passionate about it. You felt that people needed to know. And you provided that when things happened in the pandemic, you also found the opportunity to serve the community. And so really, for all of us as founders of companies, our goal is just to serve people with what they need and be that solution for disseminating information, providing inspiration, just even sharing the idea that there's so much diversity out there. I think that's the most amazing thing about the Leverage and Growth Summit, is just seeing the diverse ways that you could also have a very abundant life with being a healthcare professional, plus also having a business. That's something you transition fully out of healthcare, but sometimes you don't. There are many people who actually have really integrated both the entrepreneurial world and the clinical world.
Yeah, I mean, what I learned from this summit is that not everyone has the same path, but there's any sort of common theme amongst all the people. They're creating what they want, not kind of living by default, not letting whatever the path that you're supposed to go on kind of guide them. If they felt a sense of, hey, I want something more, if I want to be more, I want to give more or do more, whatever it is, they took action on it. And it didn't look all the same. It's not everybody went into real estate investing or everyone started this multi-million-dollar business. Not everyone went into coaching. It was different for the individual. But again, if you took that theme, commonality was that people took action. They said, I want something different. and maybe the way I've been going, and this is how I'm going to do it. They didn't know exactly how they were going to do it. The cool thing is I learned a lot from hearing these stories as well. Not everyone had a plan. No one designed this. Like when they first went to med school or went to residency, they're like, oh, I know it's going to be this way. It just kind of happened because they kept taking action, figuring out their goals, their outcomes that they really wanted, and taking really imperfect action and making it happen. So again, a lot of the advice that we got on there, just to kind of sum it up, if there's any spoiler to this, it's just do it, just get started. And that was one of the coolest things about that time during the pandemic. So many people listened to that message and started something new. And yeah, it was really fun to see.
Yeah. I mean, I have to admit, my story also started with LGS. And I thought, oh, well, maybe I should do that whole real estate thing. Everybody seems to love it. And then I took a much deeper dive and realized that doesn't have the most perfect alignment. I'd have to learn a whole bunch of new things. And so I had to think about, well, what things I already have and can bring to the table with the skills I have as an academic educator in critical care. And then I was like, maybe I should think about something like coaching. And then I went back to coaching school. So I went ahead and, like you said, take the action. Small steps become big steps, become a couple years later, podcast, coaching business, etc.
Well, congrats on doing that again. And now you're able to make an impact on so many more people just through this podcast and through your coaching. You never know where it's going to go, but I mean, it's really cool to see what you built.
Thanks. And I think the most important thing and the most important lesson for all of our listeners is the fact that everyone starts with a wonder, and the wonder can be nurtured. And so, speaking of wondering and nurturing, I'm wondering, how did the initial versions of the Accelerator get started? So the Leverage and Growth Summit was an online, and it's still going to be an online conference, hopefully. I don't know whether you want to give us some updates on the Leverage and Growth Summit, but how is it different from the Accelerator?
Yeah, well, out of that summit, at the end of 2 weeks, again, my plan was just to put these interviews out there, let people see the possibilities, let people connect to one another in our community. And then at the end of the 2 weeks, actually in the second week of us doing the summit, people were like, oh, what's next? When we run out of these stories, when we run out of interaction that we're having online, we want this to continue. And so honestly, I did not have a plan when I went into it. But then I thought, what? We need to keep this community going. If there are people that are committed to sharing resources with each other, guiding each other, supporting each other, like that kind of tribe didn't exist when I looked for it.
Oh.
And so I said, why don't we put that together? This is what people want. And so we put together something called the Leverage and Growth Accelerators, which is our group and community of physicians who are trying to leverage their medical degrees or whatever current skills they have to, again, build something, to do something, to create a little bit more of their ideal lives. And so we created a membership group, and we have probably over 700 physicians who are part of this now, who are just sharing with each other daily, connected. Because again, a lot of the story I hear from a lot of physicians is that I have these thoughts, I have these ideas, but I feel kind of alone, like kind of siloed in my own world. I don't really have that community around me locally where I'm at. If I talk about this at work, people are like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. Just keep doing what you're doing. Stay a doctor. And it doesn't mean that you don't want to be just a doctor. It just means like maybe you want to do something on the side. Maybe you want to add something. You want to grow in different ways. But again, it's hard to find that in your own world. And so because of these online communities, and we get together once a year in our conference, it allowed people to get together who are like-minded and really help and support and help each other grow. And that's how the accelerators came about. And again, that's one of the coolest things that came out of that summit.
I love that. And I hear this all the time, that all of us are just trying to find our tribe, find the many different communities that we all belong to. And I do love many types of communities and different organizations. And for many of us, we actually have many hats that we have. This is just one other one, especially if you identify being a physician and an entrepreneur. This is one of the largest communities out there, which is a testament to it.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, again, it just continues to grow, which means that there are more people who are thinking like this. I think it's going this way versus the other way, meaning that more physicians are now aware of the possibility that you can be more than just a doctor. I mean, being a physician obviously is an amazing thing. It's an honor. It's really cool that we're able to do, but it doesn't have to mean that that's all we are. We might have other aspects to us that we want to explore, other things we want to build. There are times when we want to change what our career looks like, what our life looks like, how we spend our time. And we don't need to feel like we're boxed into one place. And so why not explore that? Figure that out and do it not by yourself, but do it with other people. And that's what our community provides.
Yes, absolutely. And I think the other thing too is when our clients come to us as coaches, they usually have this little secret seed, but they're afraid to do it in a community. But they come to us as a coach and they're, let's just do this one-on-one. What are your values? If you don't know who you are and why you're doing what you're doing, then that has to get anchored first so that you can go out and explore. Then you go back to the community, then you're like, oh, now I know who I need to network with and where I need to get the information.
Yeah, I think that's so right. I mean, it's for people that feel stuck, obviously a community can absolutely help, but finding a coach, finding someone else to help you through this process, a lot of times it's just a bunch of obstacles or stories that are in our head that we're telling ourselves that I can't do
Yes.
this or I can't be this. But the funny thing is, if we look back at our lives a little bit, we've done it. We've been that. We've overcome some really hard things to get where we're at today. We just have to remember who we were then. A lot of times, a lot of people have forgotten because they're in their only daily
Right.
lives. But who were we when we decided to go to medical school, go to residency, knock down? We had to beat the competition. We had to put ourselves in a room and study for how many hours straight. Like we were
Right.
able to overcome whatever kind of fears or beliefs that we had about ourselves to accomplish these goals. And so it's just about remembering who we were and who we can be. And a lot of times working with someone like a coach like yourself, I've been with a coach for 6 years now, and it's completely changed my life and trajectory. I mean, there's so many things, even stories in my own head, which I don't realize are there. But then you look at all
Right.
these other high performing people,
Right.
CEOs, executives, you see all these athletes, and they all have these coaches still by their side, even though they're the best in the world at what they do. They still have somebody who's kind of by their side, looking at them from a objective lens and kind of guiding them through their best self. And so I found that to be really instrumental in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. Same. I've had a coach for about 5 years, ever since I started this journey. And it's interesting because it's really about having a quiet sort of Sherpa to get you there faster. I mean, you probably can get to the same conclusion on your own. You may drag and do this much slower if you don't have a coach. You get with regularity of awareness and thinking through things simply because of the questions and the support that you get.
Yeah, that's funny you
Which is,
mentioned that, because that's why we call it accelerators, by the way,
mm,
because
oh,
that's kind of the reason behind it. It's not that you can't get there, but I think for all of us, like time is short, life is
right.
short. Why can't we find ways to get there faster, but not just faster, like recklessly, faster and smarter, with making less mistakes, with more enjoyment, with more passion. And so that's kind of behind the name of the accelerators to start with.
Oh, I love that. I didn't know that. That's awesome. So, what helps you make decisions on how best to spend your time with your different ventures? Because obviously, you have blogs, you have podcasts, you have the accelerator, you have a conference in September. How do you make those decisions?
Well, this is a constant work in progress. I'll be honest with
Yeah.
you. In medicine, your shifts or whatever are kind of placed, and you
Mhm.
kind of work your life around it. Now, when you're no longer in that world, and you no longer have somebody kind of dictating your time, you get to kind of decide, like a blank canvas, how you want to spend your time. But oftentimes, like I said, we can get stuck in something and that can take up more of your time than you'd like. The problem is if you don't step back every once in a while, like look at what your schedule looks like, look at your calendar and say, hey, this is how I want it to be, certain things will just take over. Even just having your own business. I mean, a lot of times,
Right.
or real estate investing, people talk about creating passive income so that they can create more time with their family to do the things they love to do. But sometimes if you're not careful, those passive income ventures, which are supposed to be passive, your businesses or whatever, they can take over and you could just be as busy as you were before, if not more busy. I mean, the worst thing
Right.
is sometimes, like when you create a business, you're your own boss, but you're like your own worst boss, meaning that you expect more of yourself, more time after hours, and you don't get paid for it. And so you have to
Right.
really caution yourself against it. And I think every entrepreneur, everybody listening to this probably has ever been down that path, like understands what I'm talking about. And so it's really important to step back, really prioritize, again, what's important to you, and then let your schedule reflect that. You just have to go back to it every once in a while. I'll be honest with you. I go back every 3 to 6 months, look at my calendar and make sure things aren't creeping in that shouldn't be there. And I've had to go over this process, and I have an assistant who helps me with this. And just for people that are listening, I run probably 3 businesses actively. Not just, I mean, there's a couple other businesses besides passive income that I'm running in addition to my investments, but I'm also really want to be a good dad. I want to be a
Right.
good husband. I want to be a good son to my parents. I want to be a good neighbor. And these are all things that are
Right.
really important to me. And so what I've really started to do is schedule those things first and
Right.
then schedule my work around it. For example, I have certain non-negotiables now. Like I love driving my kids to school. We were just talking,
Oh,
that's why I was
yeah.
coming before this. Like, I want to drive my kids to school. That time in the car for me is extremely valuable. Even the
Yeah.
pickup from school, I want to be
Mhm.
there for their sports and activities. I want to be there on the weekends when they have games, when they have performances, whatever it is. I want to be there for that. So I make sure I put those in my calendar first. And then I
Right.
don't let anything, for the most part, conflict with that. Also, with my wife, we've decided that, hey, we want to spend some, because we're both so busy. I mean, she's working
Mhm.
as a physician part time. She's doing other things. She's helping with the family. She's doing all these other ventures too. So if our schedules don't line up and we don't intentionally try to make something happen, by default, we're just not going to be able to find time together. So we have a thing where
Right.
Tuesdays is our day. And so
Oh,
every Tuesday, we spend time together. We go to lunch. We try to go on our own dates. And so we do that. And then I schedule everything else around it. And so that's what I've learned is the key for myself to make sure that I keep open the time for things that are important to me. I schedule those first, and then I schedule all my meetings. I
mhm,
schedule my work around those things. And then
mhm.
that helps me feel like I have some balance here. And I'm not in a situation where I'm doing all these things to create time in my life, but my life gets
Right.
pushed in the back burner. And so again, I
Right.
made that mistake, which is why I'm telling you this. And this has been a constant work in progress. Schedule the things that you love and want to do first, then fit
Yeah.
everything else in, and it'll start to really work out for you.
I love that. Those are really amazing tips for everyone who's listening. And I think we often work with people and say, just do a time audit. And people are like, what the heck do you mean by a time audit? When you look at your color coded, beautiful Google, either digital or paper calendar, and you have it like all color coded by family, sports, work, all your different businesses, color code them. You can see the rainbow. If you can, it's like you eat the rainbow, you also
Mm.
see the rainbow on your calendar. And if you have the things in the balance that you want, then you're doing something right with the most important things first.
Yeah, I agree with you on that for sure.
I love that. So going back to why community networking, accountability, and coaching is so important for ongoing growth and wealth for healthcare professionals, I don't know that people were taught that well, even in our professional development during training. Why do you feel that growth idea is one of the more important foundational pieces, no matter what it is you want to end up doing?
I mean, that's a great question. For all of us, we go back and you talk to people, and maybe they've been in years and 7, 10 years in practice, and you always ask them, like, how's it feel? And they're like, I feel kind of stuck. I feel like I've hit a wall. I feel kind of bored. I don't know what to do. And it's that whole 7 to 10 year itch or whatever you might hear. And
Hmm.
I think what it is, and when I've talked to enough people about it, it's the fact that when you were in, or even before that, college, medical school, residency, there's this path that you're on.
Hmm.
And you're always striving for something new. Like there's a new goal to hit, a new target. You're constantly learning new things. You're being challenged. And yes, it can be
Right.
hard at times and difficult. And sometimes you're like, why am I doing this? But you're
Hmm.
striving and you're pushing yourself. And every 3 to 4 years, there's a new transition, a new goal, and you overcome that and you go to the next stage. But then once you become an attending, you think everything's set and everything's good. And maybe for the first couple of years, you're excited because now you're establishing your life. You're able to buy a home, start to get out of debt, feel like you have some income. And then after some time, usually it's around year 5, year 7, year 10, whatever it is, you start to realize what else is there. And
Hmm.
so a lot of people hit that stage and they feel like, okay, I don't know what's going on with me. And usually what it is, they've stopped growing, meaning that
Hmm.
they haven't really pushed themselves to something new. There's nothing in front of them dangling that they can look forward to, except the only thing they look forward to is like 20 years down the road when they retire. And that's the next carrot. And so something that's helped me is having people around me who are not okay with just kind of saying, all right, now this is my life for the next 30 years. For the community that I've been fortunate to surround myself with, I think it's really, really important. You get to pick and choose that. And you do that intentionally. I've chosen to surround myself with people who are striving for all these cool things. They have 1 year goals, they have 3 year goals, they have 5 year goals. It's not just about income, but whether it's about growing portfolios, growing a new business, being a better husband, father, whatever it is, they've got different outcomes that they're shooting for, and they're constantly moving towards those. They're learning more and they're bringing in resources and they're doing all this. And so you still feel like you're always progressing. I've heard the saying that change is inevitable, meaning that our bodies are changing. Life changes, but that doesn't make us happy. It's feeling like we're progressing towards a certain
Right.
goal that really helps us kind of feel fulfilled. And I think all of that, like whenever you take on a new challenge and something actually gets through with it and you see your kids do it, you do it, Like there's a little spark inside of you, there's a little energy that comes about. And so surrounding yourself with the right people to help you see that that's possible, see that that's important, help you along that path has been really important. And that's, of course, that helps in the form of community. It can be a coach, it can be a mentor, it can be any of these things which can help you get there. And I think it's so important for everyone to do that. Again, it hasn't been part of what we've been taught to do. That's not
Right.
been part of our normal path. All along the way, though, in medicine, we've had those mentors,
Right.
senior residents, we've had those attendings who we said, hey, I want to be like that. But then once we kind of get into practice, a lot of times you're just focusing on yourself and trying to build your own life. And we've been missing some of that. And so if people can reconnect to that, I find that it really kind of fills out their life and makes them feel a lot more full.
Yeah, it's really funny because as an educator in medical education, like learning and growing is so important, fundamental to me, which is now a fundamental part of my company, Transforming Healthcare Coaching. And I thought it'd be so cool to hear your perspective on that as well. And I completely agree. When we stop growing, stop being curious, and we don't know where we're going, and when we stagnate, that's almost worth getting too comfortable and not being excited to try something new, to do something different.
Yeah. I mean, how many people have been in there, and I've been to these medical conferences, and you kind of sitting there like, oh, okay, talk about the same old things. I mean, maybe there's a little bit more technology or this kind of thing. You're just like, all right, if I had to hear about this again, I just want to kind of just get my CME and move on. I mean, I know a lot
Right.
of people are like that, but what if you go to some of these events and conferences that are kind of showing you what's possible? I mean, sometimes there's like these health tech startup events that
Hmm.
you go. I tell people mix it up a little bit. Obviously, we have our
Hmm.
own conference where we talk about real estate and entrepreneurship. And I think a lot of people, once they come there, they realize what's possible. And then they feel like, again, when they go back to their daily lives and their doctor life, knowing that there's possibility for something different,
Right.
that alone, knowing that changes their outlook, changes their perspective.
Absolutely.
And maybe some of the things that did bother them before don't bother them anymore.
Right.
So it's really fun
Right.
and cool to see that light bulb go off.
Yeah, it really is. So what's most fun about moving and improving the LGA community with the Mighty Network and the app? I mean, you have a mobile app for your community, and I'm curious, like, what's been the most fun part as you've been learning and growing with expanding the accelerator?
Yeah, I also get bored with stuff too. Meaning bored, not meaning that I don't enjoy something. It's that I always feel like you need to grow and progress everything, even within a business. I mean, think
Hmm.
about all the businesses that didn't pivot, that didn't grow. I mean, there's the
Hmm.
stories of companies that were behemoths and they didn't evolve, they didn't pivot. And then next thing they seemed untouchable. Now they're gone.
Right.
Companies like Blockbuster or whatever it might be. But there are other companies like that. They never pivoted. They laughed at Netflix, and the next thing they're gone. And even the cameras like Polaroid back in the day and Kodak, things like that. So it's all about evolving and adopting new technologies, figuring out how to better serve the people in your community. And that's something that you need to continue to figure out. How do you continue to innovate? How do you continue to grow? And I'm not perfect at that. And so I don't know all the answers to that, but we're always trying new stuff. So if you've been part of our accelerator community, we're trying new stuff every year, every 2 years. We're trying new things. And so we're pivoting right now to change the platform on which we communicate. Our primary platform in the past was Facebook, but as Facebook has changed and it continues to
Hmm.
change, and what Facebook controls, what you see, what you do in a really big way through their algorithms and things like that. And their goals in a sense may not be aligned with yours.
Right.
And so, especially as a community, my goal is to make sure that everybody feels like they're connecting, that they're seeing what they need to see, that they're getting the resources easily that they need to get, and really do all that. And so we've been kind of searching for, honestly, a few years to figure out which platform might work out best. Now, we found a platform called Mighty Networks, and that's just one of many platforms
Mhm.
out there. I think it serves our needs the best. But again, it may not be perfect, and who knows? We may have to pivot someday in the future. But right now, it has all features that we're looking for, which is one place where people can connect, meet each other, have resources easily available to them in a place that on an app on their phone where they could just click a
Hmm.
button, not have to scroll through a whole bunch of stuff to get there and not get distracted, honestly.
Right.
And so we've gone through that platform. And again, it's a learning process to get, if you can imagine trying to get 700 people to move from one platform to the next. I mean, I can't even get my wife sometimes to respond to some text messages or whatever it is. Or some people might feel the same for me. And to get them to sign up for another platform, another app, that can be a challenge. So if you're listening to this and you're part of it, please come on over. We've got an awesome community there. The vast majority of the community has migrated, moved over, and the feedback has been great. But I will tell you, it's a learning process just like anything else. And it's a pivot, but again, it keeps it fresh, keeps it fun.
I love that. So you're probably not aware, but in our Transforming Healthcare Coaching, we also have created a community called MedThrive. Transform your health, relationships, and improve your vitality and energy. Just
Yeah.
like Mighty. Mighty versus Circle were our two biggest ones that we were looking at, simply for the same thing, the mobile application, and be able to move off of Facebook for exactly the same reasons. Since we focus so much on the foundational well-being of healthcare professionals, of all professions, all disciplines, we really want to be a very safe place. There's been a lot more
Mm,
reports, I think, on Facebook of being not safe for
mm,
other healthcare professionals, and we really wanna make sure it's curated, and so when you come over and you have to plunk some money down to be part of the membership and also get a private app, we wanna keep it as private as possible and not with anybody else's algorithm,
mm.
just like you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, great. I'm glad you did that. I mean, that's one of the other platforms that we looked at. And again, it's just a lesson in like no
Mhm.
platform will be perfect. We did feel like probably a lot of people feel at times when you're trying to make a decision, A or B, you kind of get stuck in the middle for a while. And so the key is to get over that and sometimes take action, choose one and go for it. And know that if you had to, you can always pivot again later. And so you picked a great platform as well.
Yeah, I mean, they're both equally wonderful. I've been in both of those creator ecosystems for both networks, and they're both really wonderful, and I actually have been communities on both platforms, and it all works out.
Yeah, I have communities on both anyways too. So both those apps are
Yeah,
sitting there right on my phone.
yeah. So what do you wish most people in healthcare knew about the opportunities out there and the need to get out there and find the support they need?
Holy cow. Okay. One tip around going out there. Look, I mean, this is what I found. And I think that a lot of physicians kind of discount themselves. They say that I've heard this so many times. I'm just a doctor. And to me, I say, you're not just a doctor, you're a doctor. And I try to remind people what that means. That word and that title, again, it's not something that we're out there to brag about, but to get there, let's be honest, it took a whole lot of work, dedication, ambition, intelligence to get there. And I feel like if you've climbed that mountain, you can literally do anything else when it comes to business, investments, any of these things. So I just try to remind people of what that means when they got there. Sometimes, again, it's the whole gap in the gain thing. People forget what it took to get where you're at. And they only look forward and they're like, oh, I can't get there. But if you can just remind yourself of what it took to get there, the dedication, while other people were tried to get there but didn't. They weren't willing to put in the energy, the sacrifice to get there, but you did. And so I just remind people that if you've done it in the past, you can do it again. And I just want to let people know that the possibilities are freaking endless. I mean, it's just
Mhm.
being part of this community. Like anything you think about, an idea, there's a possibility there. And so that's what I want to remind people of possibilities and the ability to do it. And if that's one thing I can leave with the people listening to that, I'd say go explore it. Go see what you can make happen in the next 3 months, month, whatever.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. We do forget how far we've come. Those multiple decades
Yeah.
of training and education, we have, I think, blocked it out in some way and forgotten. And I completely agree. That's a really great tip. The fact that you can learn something new and go all in for something else. Well, last question is just a fun question. What great books or newsletters or blogs are you consuming these days?
Wow. Okay. Yeah. I try to read books as much as possible. Again, I usually do all electronic books just to make it easier, or I try to
Mhm.
listen to them on audio while I can. So I can kind of double dip my time. Trust me, you got time. You just got to figure out where to find that where you're not sacrificing time for something else. So
Right.
I do a lot in my car when I'm commuting. I do it when I'm walking my dogs, even when I'm taking out the trash. I try to like,
Yep.
whatever it is, I'm
Mhm.
cutting up cardboard boxes. I don't know if anybody out there has ended up doing that for your recycling. You're constantly cutting up cardboard boxes. I use that time to try to educate myself. I listen to books and podcasts and things like that. So maybe some of the books that I've read that I keep handy with me. And sometimes I actually like to reread books because again,
Mm.
I tend to sometimes forget. And then sometimes you go back, you're like, oh my gosh, I missed that. Or you're focused from
Mhm.
somewhere and you didn't key in on whatever. And then you're like, the next time you're in a different situation, you're like, oh my gosh, I totally did not get that,
Right.
but I get it. So one of my favorite books out there is called The Obstacle is the Way. I talk about this book all the
Mm.
time. It's a book by Ryan Holiday. It's talking about how to overcome challenges and change your perspective on them and to see them as necessary for you to get where you need to be. And I think that all of us, if we look back at something that we thought maybe was a bad thing to happen to us, whether for me, like I always tell people initially, I didn't get into the specialty of my choice. And I thought that was probably one of the worst things to ever happen to me, but ended up pivoting and finding what I believe was like the perfect specialty for me. And so if you look back, sometimes certain things happen, even things in my job, like certain things happened in my career when I became partner, things didn't happen for me. And that led me to create all these streams of income. And I wouldn't be here talking with you today if, again, I hadn't been screwed by my boss. And so if you can look back at things that have happened in the past that maybe at that time you thought were the worst things ever happened to you, and you wouldn't want to go through it again, but you can come back now and see that they were necessary for you to become who you are, for you to make the choices that you made to get you where you're at today. And that book really always reminds me about that. So whenever I'm in a mood where I'm like, oh my gosh, like this is difficult, this is tough, I need courage, I need this, I just go back to that book, I read a chapter or two, and it helps change my perspective. So I always have that one close to me. Another book that is one of my favorites is this book called Die with Zero. And
Oh,
I really recommend that to people. It kind of just talks about whatever is considered traditional retirement today. A lot of people tell you about that. You go to school, then you work for 30 years so you can hopefully enjoy the 30 years after that. That kind of thinking to me, I realized that it doesn't make a lot of sense. I think for a lot of people, that's what we're taught. That's what we're sold by financial advisors. That's what we're taught by our peers. Grind for 30 years. And then when you retire, then you can really enjoy the life. The truth is, first of all, it's not guaranteed that you'll get there. Number
right.
two, by the time you get there, a lot of the loved ones that you have around you right now, like your kids, are not going to be there. Meaning they have their own lives. So you're not
Right.
going to be able to even spend time with the ones you really want to spend time with. And number three, your health might not be where it needs to be for you to be able to do all the things you want to do. You might have the wealth later to enjoy heli skiing or doing these adventurous things that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
I promise you, by the time you get there, you might not have the health to even want to do it. And so why not do it and take care of these things and enjoy the prime time in your life, which is now probably for everyone listening to this, your prime in
Right.
your life where you have the health, you have the money, you have the people around you and the community and the relationships around you to make the most out of life is probably right now. And are you doing everything you can to make the most of it? Because the truth is you can't take all the money that you make with you. And what the book tells you is that based on the numbers, based on all this, and again, everybody listening to this, you're probably going to die at the peak of your net worth, meaning that you're going to die with the most money you've ever had in your life. You're going to actually leave with you or leave with somebody else. And all that money that you've worked hard to accumulate that you die with was time earlier that you spent to create that, but you'll never get that back. So why not, instead of spending the time now to create money you're never going to get to use, why not use that time now for things that you enjoy, for things that you love, and then figure out how to die with zero. Now, it's meaning that you don't want to take anything with you. It's kind of the concept.
Right.
And so
Right.
that means you squeeze the most out of life, squeeze the most out of your opportunities. And that's what that book talks about. It talks about that concept. So it's one of my favorite books that I love to go back to. And again, it's kind of like preaching to the choir for me because I kind of discovered that concept earlier on too. But somebody articulated it so well in that book. And so I recommend people check out those two books. And I promise you, it'll change your life.
That is amazing. Just those are two great recommendations in general, and realizing how much internally we've created those stories for ourselves and trying to always like balance out that into the story of what we've been taught to how can you find that in your day to day, even just how can you truly enjoy the people you're with, even if it's at work, because work people can be pretty awesome. They're pretty funny. They're fun to work with. Hopefully you have a great team that you work with. And when you are caring for patients, they are glad that you're there. Sometimes no one thanks you. But the reality is what you do is important, whether it's with your patients, whether it's with your family, whether it's with your business, whether it's being on a podcast, these things matter. And so I'm hearing you say is that what we do matters. And when it fills your cup, the rest will follow. So how can people work with Passive Income MD? Where should we direct them?
It's pretty simple. It just starts with our website. Just come on over to www.passiveincomemd.com. You can find out about our events. You can find out about our communities. You can get educated. Really, I would just recommend to everyone here, just find like-minded people. It doesn't have to be our community. It could be anybody else's community. Just people that you can surround yourself with who will push you, that will hold you maybe to a different standard, that will keep you accountable. Whoever that is, again, we hope that our community can serve you in a big way. But if it's not our community, find another one. That's just what I recommend. But that's definitely the launching pad for all of this.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Peter, for coming on our podcast and showing us what the power of serving people and helping people in healthcare and growing from there and just doing the next right thing to help everyone. So thank you, everyone, for listening to the Transforming Healthcare Coaching podcast. Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below. If you leave a rating, we would really love it because it really helps us on Apple, YouTube, Spotify. And we'll see you next time on the next episode. Bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
bro.
Thanks so much for listening. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe and share with a colleague who would benefit. Together, we can transform healthcare one person at a time. Find us anywhere you find your podcasts. Ready to take your healthcare leadership journey to the next level? Book a discovery call free at transforminghealthcarecoaching.com to explore our personalized coaching packages designed specifically for healthcare professionals like you.